Good morning, everyone, and welcome to AIPCon 7. My name is Jack Dobson, AIP lead here at Palantir, and it is my immense joy and honor to welcome you to the show. We have a full morning's worth of programming lined up for you. We've got a brilliant pre-show that we're kicking off to kind of tee up the show, and then we'll be jumping into a set of customer keynotes, which I highly recommend you stick around for. It's around 2.5 hours of programming, customer keynotes, demos, and news stories being told on the AIPCon stage. But to kick us off, as I mentioned, we are teeing up a little bit of a pre-show to get you guys warmed up for the show. I am joined, very luckily, by two awesome customers and also our chief architect at Palantir, Akshay. Love to introduce those two to you now. So firstly, Kelli Howard, VP of Supply Chain at Land & Frost. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. And Dr. Jaimie Weber, Associate Chief Medical Informatics Officer at Tampa General Hospital. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
Brilliant. And finally, as I mentioned, Akshay Krishnaswamy, Chief Architect at Palantir. Great to have you back on the show.
Great to be here, Jack.
Awesome. So, what are we here to chat about? Well, we're going to have a few minutes of pre-show to tee up those keynotes, and we're going to be talking about a key concept that we're seeing emerge across our customer base in this latest era. That concept is the idea of rebuilding the operating system of the enterprise. We're increasingly seeing our customers not only build use cases, not only build point solutions, but actually start connecting these workflows together to really redefine decision making at not just the organizational level, but actually at the industry level as well. So these two customers joining me today are doing exactly that in two very different industries, but we're very excited to show you a live demo of some of the work that they're doing to kind of show how those concepts are being shared across industries. We're going to be starting off with Jaimie talking through our work at Tampa General Hospital. We're building the hospital OS together. So Jaimie, kick us off.
Thanks, Jack. All right. Very happy to be here today talking about the work that we've been doing at Tampa General Hospital in partnership with Palantir. Tampa General is a large academic medical system in the state of Florida. We have a six hospital system with our flagship 1,000-bed academic medical center, about 150 ambulatory locations, and we serve about 6.7 million patients across about 15 counties within Florida. We've been partnered with Palantir for a little over 3 years now, and when we first started, we had a lot of big problems to solve with our health system. We started making quite a few point solutions, but as we were making those solutions and deploying those solutions, we saw threads. Information from one solution really needed to be uncovered in another. One group of customers needed information that was determined in another solution, and we really started to see everything kind of come together for what we're now calling the modern hospital OS. So today we're going to walk through a little bit of what that looks like, starting with what our data foundation looks like. So the core of all of the work that we've done is in this ontology layer. You can see each of our workflows is built on one or more agents. You can see those agents here in purple. Those agents query specific patient information, which you can see here in red, and that information has different logic functions done on it or mathematical calculations, which is then written back into the ontology, and you can see that right back in yellow. So this is basically the architecture that ensures a single source of truth for all of our patient information, all of our employees, all of our team members, so they're all making decisions on the same information. Data architecture is interesting and everything, but what does that really mean for our patient population? So today we're going to walk through a little bit of a patient journey, starting with our sepsis response hub. Sepsis is a really interesting diagnosis, and it's the #1 driver for morbidity and mortality in hospitals worldwide, as well as a really great opportunity for us to have early intervention and early treatment algorithms. When we intervene or when we find a sepsis patient early, we determine that they have sepsis and we treat them with the appropriate algorithms very early in their course. We change their outcomes exponentially. We can get patients home safer. Let's dig into this sepsis response hub. So our rapid response team at the hospital monitors this 24/7. The rapid response team is a group of very highly trained nurses that monitors clinical deterioration and high-risk conditions within our hospital. Within this hub, it shows any patients that have a concern for sepsis. You can see Miss Jane Thornfield here. She's in our ED. We have some vital signs here that are abnormal and look like they're getting a little bit worse. We may have a little bit of organ dysfunction happening, and we have a suspected source of infection. So big risk for sepsis for this patient. One big piece of, one really important thing about all of the work that we do within our modern hospital operating system is data transparency. So any piece of data that you see within these systems, you can click on, it'll dig into it, open up where in the patient's chart that information comes from, give you all of the context around that information so that you have clarity into why we're making these decisions and what the next steps should be. This really creates trust with our clinicians and makes sure that we have clinical accuracy. We also always have a human in the loop with everything that we do, making sure these tools are uncovering information at the point of decision, not actually making decisions. They're just uncovering the appropriate information and giving it to our clinicians. So now that we've validated that Ms. Thornfield actually probably has sepsis, the next step is to contact the provider. Rapid response team puts that call out. They decide together that a sepsis alert should be placed, and that alert is placed. That then causes Mrs. Thornfield to be flipped over to our sepsis alert hub. This is the second part, which is the treatment and management of sepsis. What this does, monitors everybody in the hospital that has a sepsis alert, making sure they're getting the right treatment at the right time. You can see most everything is done for Mrs. Thornfield, but we do have a flag here that says the fluids haven't yet been administered. We can see they've been ordered, but they haven't been administered. The really important thing here is the rapid response team can see that, call down to our floor and say, hey, how can I help you? What can I do to help move this patient along? So really making sure that those patients get the care that they need. Previous to this, it was a very cognitively heavy process, relying on one clinician to do all of it. Now, we still let our clinicians do the bulk of the work, but if something falls out, we have a backup system in place for reliability. So now, let's jump into the actual hospital. We're gonna follow Ms. Thornfield into her care, into one of our units with our care navigation view. Ms. Thornfield's now in the ICU. You can see our care navigation view here. Shows some clinical information, including she's on a ventilator, shows some of the treatments that are happening, including some imaging that's pending, as well as any care pathways she's on. And we can see what some next steps might be. We can see that she came from one of our other hospitals, isn't really eligible for transfer back there, but might be eligible for our hospital at home program. One really interesting thing here is previous to this tool, we didn't have transparency into all of the systems that we had in place and eligibility for our patients for those systems. It relied on whoever was caring for the patient to understand the process, get the patient in, and really figure out how to get them keyed into that program. Now all of this is codified within one place, and no matter who's coming in, if it's a brand new intern on day one or a seasoned clinician, they have the same information in front of them to make decisions. It's really helpful. Other things you see here, clinical summaries at the bottom of this view. We have clinical summaries, information from the chart, where before we would dig around in the chart for multiple minutes to learn information. It's all here, and again, data transparency. We can click on any piece and it'll show us exactly where that comes from. So now, moving on with Ms. Thornfield, due to some excellent care from our clinicians at Tampa General, she's doing much better, and it appears that she's ready for downgrade out of the ICU. The tool verifies that information and brings that up on our multidisciplinary rounds for the clinical team to be able to make that decision. With one click, they can verify all that information, put in some info for our bed planners, and submit that request to them. Previous to this, all of our bed planning was very reactive. What we did, an order was placed, and then the bed planners would have to work really hard to find the right bed, make sure it met the patient's needs, and get the patient in that bed. Now that we have this information 24, 36 hours in advance, we can make all of those subsequent moves, have time to get the bed cleaned, patients moved around to get that patient their ultimately appropriate bed. So next step, we're going to talk about what the patient placement team sees. So we'll go to our patient placement bed planning view. You can see in the upper right, they've gotten a notification from us saying that Mrs. Thornfield's headed to the step-down unit. We'll click on that notification and we can see all of the information, all of the criteria for the bed that Ms. Thornfield needs, and we see we have a bed actually available for her. Adult step down 3F meets all of the criteria. So what we can do is we can click begin bed planning, but if for some reason that bed wasn't appropriate or we didn't have a bed available, we could alternately click the find alternative bed for patient. The really interesting thing about this is when we click that, it will give us some multiple options, sometimes even including multiple step moves, so that we can move one patient into another appropriate bed so that we can open up a bed for Mrs. Thornfield or any other patient. This is really helpful, again, cognitive load. The goal of everything that we're doing is really to reduce the cognitive load on our teams and give them the information that they need at the point of decision so that they can make the decision and move our patients through our system efficiently.
That's incredible. That is awesome. I mean, that journey, the fact that you're really orienting the technology around the patient and their journey through the system, like, of course, this is powerful tooling, but at the end of the day, the patient stays at the center, right?
Yep.
I guess to kind of wrap this up, that's obviously just one of, or three of, a handful of workflows that connect into this operating system. How does this change the way that you guys think about the next challenge, the next use case? Are you sort of starting from this framework and then compounding upon it? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, so in the beginning, we took the problem and we tried to fix the problem. Now that we have this framework, we're taking the framework and we're saying, how can we use this framework to fix the next problem? Our next big problem is actually our operating room space, and we're really excited about digging in there and figuring out how to make sure that our patients have everything they need when they show up to the OR so their cases aren't canceled, make sure that we can get all of their authorizations in place early so that we can have that efficient flow through the OR space and back out home, which is the ideal place.
That's awesome, and that operating room scheduling and management is actually one of the workflows we're going to be seeing in one of our upcoming keynotes later today. So I think it's one of those great themes of AIPCon. There's a lot of sort of areas that people are tackling from different angles, and the big part of AIPCon, it all being customer-led, is y'all can all learn from each other. So Jaimie, thank you so much for that walkthrough.
Absolutely,
that's incredible.
that was great.
We'll have some time to dive into that in a bit more detail in a little bit, but I kind of want to take that same operating system concept and shift it over to an entirely different journey. We talked about the journey of the patient. Kelli, you're going to be talking about the journey of something very different. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing at Land of Frost.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm with Land of Frost. We are a third generation, family-owned lunch meat packaging organization. We do some sausage, and as well as we have a variety of brands in both our conventional space, as well as our natural specialty. You would see our Welshire brand in such places as Whole Foods and Sprouts. So we're all over the country. And what we're really focused on is optimization, right? And not just equipment optimization, which we've done a lot of work on automation and things like that in the past, but also our internal processes and really streamlining where we can. So we partnered with Palantir back in September and identified 3 use cases in our planning organization. So first starting off with our master planning area, then going into finite scheduling, and then going into clear to build. So that's what I'm going to walk you guys through today and show how we've optimized our process and taken what we estimate to be anywhere from 70 to 80 hours worth of work per week out of our overall process. So here's a really great dashboard. Historically, we did everything in Excel. So downloading from our ERP system, putting it into Excel, creating reports. This is a great dashboard for an executive to come in, or even our master scheduling team to come in and really understand what's happening as far as customer fulfillment. Jaimie talked about, customer patient care, and we talk about quality of good products going to our customers and ensuring great service to our customers. It's the same concept, right, as we're working through our organization. So as we go through it, we're looking at, where can we service our customers, what's our inventory levels. All of this is live data that we can, show graphs on and don't have to download and do analysis as we move forward. So this has been a great import into our area. These are reports that our team had been doing in the past, sending out via email. We can now come in here right now and see live data as of this morning, which is fantastic.
That's awesome.
And then as we look at our master scheduling process, which was our first use case, we've been able to create our production schedule going out 18 months into the future. And when we're going through our annual operating program, this used to take us about 40 hours to put together. This can be done in about 30 minutes. So huge optimization from us, especially when we're running scenario planning. You can see the kind of seasonal build that we have from a lunch meat perspective, so that really helps us identify ways that we can improve and maybe move some stuff around. So as we move forward, the other thing that we take a look at is where our optimization happens in the manufacturing plant. So changeovers, it's a huge cost for us. We really want to reduce the amount of changeovers that we have in the organization, because the more changeovers you do, that means the line is down and you're not running product. So that chart there kind of showed our historical changeovers, and what we've seen by the implementations that we've just done recently is a reduction in those changeovers. And we have all kinds of constraints that cause us to do changeovers, which I'll get into here in a little bit. So as we kind of look at our master scheduling process, we create a master schedule which really says we're going to produce this product in this plant during this week, and then we kind of give it to our manufacturing team and said, okay, now identify these products, what lines they're going to be run on, what days, and what quantities. And the idea is that we are achieving 100% against our master schedule. So this is a great tool for our planners to go into and identify, where am I missing From a production perspective, you can see we have 100% here. Of course, we're doing a great job. We've scheduled everything we said we're going to do. And it's interesting, these little pucks here, which we'll get into a little bit of a demo on later, this was actually something that I identified when I attended another Palantir event, and it was for an airline industry.
Oh, wow.
And they showed how if a flight gets moved or scheduled, these pucks move. Similar concept. If something happens, we don't get raw materials in on time, or we have to move out our production schedule, these pucks all move in congruence with each other. So it's a great opportunity to really kind of think through different industries and how you can adapt it to what you have in your existing industry. But what we're going to go through now is we're going to go through a scenario where we take a look at some specific SKUs and identify where we can go. So we have some constraints that we have in the meat processing industry. If you think about when you make paint, for example, you want to start with white and then you want to add your colors and go into black. You have a similar situation when you get into meat processing, where you want to start with kind of your base item first. You don't want to run black pepper turkey first and then you have pepper going into other items. It's a huge no-no, right? So we have a sequence that we have to run our items in, and we built that into this tool. And the idea is that if I had a planner in our Madisonville, Kentucky facility, and she needed to do planning for our Searcy, Arkansas plant, all those requirements are already built in. We have a lot of tribal knowledge in our organization. We have someone who's been with the organization for 40 years, and we've taken the opportunity to put all of her knowledge into the tool so that when someone new comes in, they don't have to go reference a spreadsheet or go reference a sticky note somewhere. It's all built into the tool for them to really optimize as we move forward. So as we're planning, the tools can identify how many crews we need on a specific line, how many changeovers something might cause, 1 or 2 or 5, depending on what we might be running that day, but it also gives the planners an idea of what the optimization is. So as we go through it, and they may say, I don't want to run that specific item on that specific day, they can actually take these pucks and move them from one day to the next, move them around from a sequencing perspective, and if they do it and it's not in the right sequence, it's going to give them an error.
Right.
So that's the huge amount of tribal knowledge that we have. We have one planner who just started with us a year ago, and she said, if I would have had this a year ago, it would have been so much easier to onboard and so much faster, right? So we're doing some really great work with getting that tribal knowledge in, getting alerts in. Our quality team has done a wonderful job of creating our matrix as far as our washdowns go, so that we can really achieve the least amount of changeovers possible. And then here we have an idea, we're clicking into a specific SKU, and you can see there on the right, the historical run rates of all of the pieces of equipment that have ever ran this item in the last 90 days. And we're taking that information to determine what are our run rates as we move forward, and that's identifying where our capacity is. And so if a planner would like to move this puck to another line, they can actually look in here and see, well, what is the best line that this has actually run on in the past versus going off of tribal knowledge, which may not be accurate. This is data, and we're making assumptions and we're making decisions based on the data that's being provided versus hearsay, if you will, right? The other thing that we're taking a look at is, do we have the inventory needed to manufacture this item? So we're going to follow this log through into our cook cycle and see, when is this log going to be made? Because it was red, and it's telling me I don't have any log inventory to produce that. But if we come in here and see, oh, this item is going to be cooked on this specific day to support that overall production run, it gives them that overall view to really make those decisions on whether or not they can move forward. And then we're going to take a look at our emulsion level. So it kind of goes all the way down. When we built this, it's not just about packaging. It's about our cook schedule and our stuffing schedule and our emulsion schedule, and ultimately getting into our raw material purchases, which we'll get into here in a moment, and making sure that we're making the right decisions from a raw material perspective, because that's also where we have a huge opportunity from a money perspective, right? So this one's telling me I have all of these items that are going to be available when I go to run our finished good that we had looked at earlier, and now I'm going to take a look at our raw materials. And do I have the right raw materials in place to run what I need to run when I need to run it? But also taking a look at, what are our alternatives from a raw material perspective? And can I substitute something based on the price that we have from a contract and based on the price that's in the marketplace? And we have a great opportunity to hopefully save some money there as we go through and identify what substitutes may be in place. But we're really excited to kind of bring this to an end. We've been working on it since September. We hope to have it completed in the next couple of months, but 3 use cases in a really short amount of time, and looking forward to some other opportunities for us as well.
That is incredible. I was honestly lost for words throughout all of that. I was
It's a lot.
I was hoping to sort of get conversation going, but it boggles the mind. I think a few things that stand out for me, and like actually I would love to get your thoughts as well. I think firstly, we've seen the same platform serve two very different journeys, very different industries, but also to a level of depth where the software is shaping to your needs, right?
Yes.
It wasn't that you felt the need to constrain your workflow to a format that also fits a hospital system. Like, this is truly custom stuff, but as you say, deliverable in a matter of weeks and months.
Yes.
Actually, as we think about this operating system concept, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think both examples did a great job of showing not just connected data, but connected operations. And having these outcomes that were in mind almost before the software, but then being able to unlock more and more iterative value as you deliver each incremental use case.
Yes.
So it's this idea of saying, well, I have a long-term plan, but I want to step into it and transform while I'm modernizing, right? So I think it's all directed by value at the end of the day, people's lives, actual food and things that are critical to their lives, and I think that outcome orientation is what gets us all working on these platforms every day.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And speaking of which, I think we kind of teed up that idea of how do you think about the next problem. I imagine you're not just transforming technology, you're also bringing these teams together to collaborate and chain decisions in a way that just wasn't possible, or certainly wasn't efficient previously. So curious from both of you, like in terms of the people within your organizations, how are they thinking about making decisions differently? Is this kind of transforming strategically where the company's going beyond just the tech?
Yeah, I think I can go first. So our mission at Atlanta Frost, our purpose is really to make every day more fulfilling than the last, right? And that's more than just serving food to people and nourishing them, right? It's also intellectually, internally with our internal selves to make it more fulfilling when you come into your day-to-day job, right? It's not just copying and pasting data from an Excel spreadsheet. You're actually able to make decisions, and that's what we've learned from this, is we're now able to make more strategic decisions and identified, hey, if I would have followed what Palantir's tool said, I actually would have had a better plan 2 weeks from now than what I did on my own, right? So it's making those decisions and making that leap to really change the course of how you're thinking about things and really being more strategic than just copying and pasting data back and forth.
100%. I mean, Jaimie, curious to see how does that same thing apply in the healthcare world?
Very similar. When we engage with Palantir, it's really about making sure that the tool fits the workflow for our team. Historically, when things come into healthcare, it's here's this tool, you have to change your workflow to fit it. Our teams are really excited because now we're coming in and we're saying, what is your workflow? How can we help make that workflow more efficient? And they engage at 100% every single time, and we actually have people coming to us now and saying, we need your help, because they see the outcomes. So everybody's really excited about the work that we're doing with Palantir and the next steps.
And maybe I'm curious to pick up on that point there. We talk as Palantir a lot about the forward deployed approach to bringing our engineers on site, really sitting in your seat, living that workflow and sort of building from there, right? So kind of curious, how's that experience been for you guys? I've certainly thoroughly enjoyed working with both your teams at Palantir to kind of get this ready and learn your story and see you sort of pull this together. How does it work out for you working with your teams from Palantir?
I mean, it's been an amazing partnership. Actually, one of our executives has said that, of all of the consultants that we've had, Palantir is the first one that's really come in, tried to understand our workflows and made a difference, which is a testament to the work that you guys do. All of our teams love when they see the engineers coming, and it's really interesting because we'll go in with one thought in mind, and multiple times the engineer has seen a little bit of a workflow that somebody needed changed, and they'll whip up a quick tool and be like, here, use this. So people are running down, knocking down our doors, trying to get the engineers, and I love walking through the halls because I'll see a random engineer, I'll be like, hey, what are you doing here? And then they tell me all about what they're learning, and it's super interesting to see how quickly they can come into a completely new space, understand the workflows, understand how people do their work, and offer up suggestions to change it. I think sometimes we get so set in our ways, we've been in healthcare for a long time, this is how we do things. That outside perspective is really helpful to come in and say, hey, well, why are you doing it that way?
Exactly.
Maybe you should think about doing it this way. And we're like, oh, maybe we should. And it really makes a huge difference.
And Kelli, you mentioned that yourself, you saw at Palantir Pre, that other event, you saw a workflow from the airlines world.
Yes.
And that was the inspiration for the workflow of the scheduling, the dynamic scheduling component of what you just showed. It sounds like gathering those sort of thoughts from completely different industries, completely different workflows can still be a great source of inspiration.
Oh, absolutely. And the Palantir team brings those to you as well, right? I mean, I'm always amazed by, I get to the point where I have, something that we want to work on, and the next morning they come in and they're like, we worked on this last night, and look, here's a version 0. And it's amazing that they're so fast on it, but it's because you're drawing from so many different resources that have that input and that data from historical references. It's great.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, if we're all a little bit sleep deprived today, you know why. Like, putting together these stories really does take a bit of work. But honestly, that is our time for the pre-show. So thank you so much again. Thank you to Jaimie, thank you to Kelli, thank you to Akshay for joining me on the pre-show. Do not go anywhere. We have a full day's programming lined up for you. Welcome once again to AIPCon 7.